Trafficking means dealing or trading in something that's illegal. Human trafficking is carrying out a trade of humans. Now, human trafficking after drugs and the arms trade is reported to be the third largest organized crime across the world. Now, according to estimates, human trafficking in India may affect between 20 to 65 million people. To help us understand the nuances of human trafficking, today we have Mangneo Lhungdim, the Executive Director of Oasis India. Now, Oasis India was established in 1993 and started its work in Mumbai and later expanded to cities like Bangalore, Chennai, and the rural parts of Andhra Pradesh, with a key focus on anti-human trafficking, and it collaborates with local authorities, including the police and child welfare committees, to prevent children from being trafficked for labor or sexual exploitation. Now, Mangneo sir is leading Oasis India since October 2016 and has made the organization more competitive, professional, and future ready. Hello, sir. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with you. Thank you so much.
Okay, so we'll dive straight into the conversation. My first question to you is, could you help us understand the term human trafficking? Now, usually we identify this term with sexual exploitation, but it could be for a number of reasons, such as child labor, for marriage, for begging, or even for organs. So could you help us understand what this is?
Surely, thank you. Human trafficking in person is a form of modern day slavery and not really restricted to sexual exploitation. That's how we understand here, and also in the development sector at large. It basically involves illegal transport of a person, be it by force or by deception or by fraud or for the purpose of labor, domestic sexual exploitation, and anything that the activities that may benefit some other people financially. Yes, it could include child labor, begging, marriage, forced criminal activities. So for us in Oasis, when we say human trafficking, it need not be always sexual exploitation. It can be also forced migration, and also, people who are innocent being taken out by force from one place to the other, not necessarily for sexual gratification. I hope I explained that in a very brief manner.
Yeah. I think we got it. So my next question to you would be something on the similar lines, that when we say that humans could be trafficked for a number of reasons, we have usually seen that people from the most vulnerable sections of the society are victims of this term, are victims of this, human trafficking. So why is it so? Is poverty like one of the most important reasons that this is happening? And I also want to understand that, has COVID made the situation worse? What is the situation right now?
I think that's very, very valid question to be, discussed at this time, especially after the pandemic. Yes, coming back to the poverty nexus and human trafficking, definitely poverty is a key contributor, maybe the most significant contributor to human trafficking, but essentially not the singular driving force. That's what we have realized in our work here over the last 27 years. For us, we believe illiteracy and lack of or absence of awareness of most vulnerable people is a bigger threat than poverty per se. Because you might see a lot of people who are struggling in abject poverty, but not necessarily landing up in human trafficking as a victim. So, of course, there is no doubt about abject poverty being a push factor. But in our experience, as I've mentioned, we believe that there is a direct connect between poverty, disaster, climate change, displacement, or all this trickling the unsafe migration or the forced migration, And then, the most unfortunate ones landing up into the nets of the traffickers. That is why in Oasis, we believe that whenever we intervene in a very composite and holistic approach. We call our programming across the country a hub approach, not a singular, addressing of the issues leading to human trafficking, but we go into a community where there are vulnerable, community who could be victims of trafficking. We work with the people of age group, of all age group, children, the adolescents, the young, and also the aged, and also more particularly with the either girls, young girls, and the women. And so much so in a way that we work in the community to involve all other stakeholders in a way that, they we prevent any incidents of trafficking or unsafe migration. That is one way of our intervention, because we realize that poverty itself is not the only push factor for trafficking.
Right.
Thank you.
So when you say that education is one of the main factors that leads to human trafficking, so what can we do to eliminate or reduce the impact of this aspect? Is there anything specific that comes to your mind that can be implemented?
Yes, if we may take the example of people who have landed up in the red light areas in Mumbai, where we have been working for the past 27 years continuously, we have a lot of stories, and we realize that quite a lot of the women are picked up at the very young age of 13, 14. And then in order for them to reach the destination, which we call the red light areas, they have to pass through a lot of, places, transit points. And most of them probably have come from the remotest area, including, our neighboring countries like Bangladesh, Nepal, and mostly from the eastern part of the country, including the northeast and also the Bimaru areas, from even as far as Andhra Pradesh.
Right.
So there, if you actually look at the, the data, the secondary data available, you would see that they're coming from those areas which are, very, very underdeveloped. Like there will be no basic infrastructures like schools, or they're all school dropout. See, young people at that age of around, 13, just about to reach the teenage age, they need to be in the schools. So if they are not in the school, I think that's where the, the first step of vulnerability starts. So education is directly very, very connected to where the women land up or the young people land up. So we believe that from where all these, victims have come, we realize when we check with the data, these are areas which are hit by natural disaster or disturbances like Naxalites, conflicts, and then over and above, there are no basic infrastructure of education, and poverty, obviously.
Yeah.
Poverty is the overarching problem there. So the issue of awareness, the education awareness is almost absent there. So that is where we feel that we need to do more in areas which are potential, source area for traffickers, to do more of a, what you call the awareness program, work with those agencies who are already there, work with the NGOs, work with the schools, including as early as at the Anganwadi State Center. You need to, create awareness with all the awareness, with all the Anganwadi centers, Anganwadi workers. So we feel that, wherever we have worked in some part of the rural areas, we have done that very effectively. For the past 9-10 years, we were working in Andhra, in one of the remotest district of Chittoor, in Pungunur, where we work in around 11 villages, where, effectively we use the Anganwadi centers, the schools in the villages, and also the tutors that we have trained them up, which we call them change agents. I think there has been a massive impact there. The district used to be a source of child labor, tour, where after 10 to 15 years of our work, of course, I can't say that for certain, but then we have not had incidents of massive child labor going off from those villages. So definitely there's a connect between education awareness and trafficking or modern day slavery.
Right. Because you said that the organization has already worked with the survivors for the past 20 to 25 years, I want to understand that does a chain of trafficking severely affects a person's physical, mental, and even psychological well-being? And you have rescued more than 600 victims. So how difficult is it to help them cope with the trauma and overcome it, and then make it a point to include them in the mainstream society?
Yeah, I think this is really the crux of the entire work that we do. It has been an ongoing challenge, an ongoing uphill climb for us. We say we have worked for more than 25 years. In fact, we are in our 27th year now, and we have a very small impact because the challenges are overwhelming, especially as I said, when a young girl is sold out or, taken by force from her surrounding, from her parents or from her family, and then has to travel thousands of kilometers, and then abused throughout the way. And then, you as an Oasis or as an intervener, you interface, or you encounter them after so many years. They say 10 to 15 years of the abuse, consistent abuse. They have already lost the hope. They have already lost, humanity, the aspiration as a human. And they're like commodities. That's the moral, I would say, the identity that has been destroyed. So it is not only physically challenging, but also, having any impact on the person, individuality. There is a psychosocial, I think, aspect to that. And you can't simply give them a job and take them out the next day. You have to walk through their psyche. You have to, rebuild that trust of humanity. Right. Trust to, they, in some cases, their uncles have sold them out, or their parents have sold them out because of poverty. Or they have been, cheated. So they suspect the world. They suspect the neighborhood. So their only world revolves around the red light areas, their colleagues, or the madams, or the pimps. And they slowly build their world around very limited human face. They don't trust the outside world. And it takes us actually 10 years to build the rapport, solid rapport. So that's why I think the number is very limited. But I think one part of the challenge is the psychosocial, intervention, because there is a high rate of relapse because they don't trust easily. And some flipped here even after working for 5 years, and something you say and you don't do. Yeah, I think they fall back to that zone of disbelieving, disbelief, and also being cheated. So it's a very, very challenging thing to build up the trust, the hope, the dignity of the person to, stand on their foot.
Right. Especially interacting with someone who has been through a lot of trauma, it takes a lot from you as well, because it is emotionally draining, because you're kind of, taking them out of that whole situation again and again in their head. So yeah, it must be difficult for the team. So is there a procedure that Oasis India follows while rescuing a trafficked victim? And the most important question that I was having was, do you receive any threats, since this is a tricky situation to be in, where you're dealing with a nexus of notorious people. So there are just victims, then these are powerful men or people who are involved in this whole situation. So how do you deal with it?
I think, yes, this is something that even I am struggling to understand. As you already know, I'm not as old as many of my colleagues who have worked in this area, especially working in the destination that is the source area in Mumbai related areas. I have not worked here. So I'm with Oasis, and I got to know a little bit from my interaction with the team members, and also my frequent visit and interaction with the survivors, and also the volunteers there. So from whatever I gather, I think they might not express the threat or the challenges, uh, as much as we would we would have we would have actually comprehend, because we are an outsider. But there are a lot of staffs who have lived with the situation for the past 10-15 years, and for them they've got really internalized, and to them, even if you ask them today, they would not really identify that as a danger or as a threat, because they are living in that zone for a lot of time. So, but then if you go in and you try to spend a week there, or 1 week, or few days there, you realize that they're they're living in a very unsecure environment, especially because the nexus, the sex trade is, I think, the second largest illegal finance in this world, and it's not really clean. It's dirty, and there are a lot of illegal benefits. And I mean, you all know these are surviving because of patronages from various quarters.
Right.
They may be people from the underworld, or maybe politicians or businessmen or whatnot. So those are actually the stakeholders, hidden one. So for us, as I mentioned earlier, it takes us 10 years, because we have to build a rapport not only with the victims, survivors. We have to also be accepted, not as a threat, not seen as a threat by those stakeholders. And then, slowly, what we do is we don't force, use force. We wait till the time the survivors are confident enough. We, build confidence along with them for several years, then they feel confident enough to come out on their own. So that is where the threat is kind of reduced, because also we have the support of the law. I mean, the government, the child welfare committees, the police, especially when it comes to younger girls. I think we don't use, all those things. We take the help of the police, we take the help of the child welfare committee, and there is an immediate action of rescue them.
Right.
But when it comes to, those a little bit elderly, survivors, it is only through voluntary, decision that they come out. And by the time they come out, actually, there is a less threat, of the forces trying to detain them. Now, how we work, basically, as I said, is through a very long process of being accepted by all the stakeholders, and not posing a threat to, those vested interest group.
Yeah.
But at the same time, also using the state machinery when needed. Like if young girls are being brought in, that is illegal. So we need to quickly take them out. But whoever are already trapped, we can't do that, because it's not possible. They have to come out on their own, and it takes a lot of years to give them alternative, livelihood, skills, option. And at the same time, as I said earlier, it's the psychology, it's the mental strength that needs to be built for a long years. You can't do it in 1 year. So the other challenges that we face are basically, mostly overcome, like the initial stage, the pimps and the men. They're not necessarily the husbands, but each one of the girl will have a man, mostly not husband. Those are the one who would pose, threats. But then I think in all the cases where we have worked for more than 10 years, they're part of the system, and they have been, able to, overcome those challenges. And then, of course, the other challenge that we face are basically, mostly overcome, like the initial stage, the pimps and the men. They're not necessarily the husbands, but each one of the girl will have a man, mostly not husband. Those are the one who would pose, threats. But then I think in all the cases where we have worked for more than 10 years, they're part of the system, and we don't intrude into their space, but they also do not disturb us much. Otherwise, occasionally, when younger girls are being taken out, there used to be some threats from unknown sources, and those are the things we live with actually. Of course, fortunately, the last 25 years, nothing has done so, ugly, and no physical, abuse of our staff, or or anything that was beyond that we could manage.
I think one part of your, I think the strategy is to make sure that even your team remains safe. So before you go into any operation, you might have to make sure that, that doesn't happen. So is it something that you keep following up? Okay, if there's a team that's visiting any area, then, make sure that they are prepared with everything, right?
Yeah. In fact, also, I think I need to mention here that we are not alone in this work, either in the source area or the transit, or more particularly in the destination. So we are better known as an organization working in the red light areas, in so much as our work is concerned in human trafficking. So there, we also work along with so many other NGOs who are equally committed, if not more. And there are also a lot other, semi-government, government, and also civil societies, including some of the faith-based groups like the churches, the other faith group. There are a lot of charities who are concerned about this, but some of us are right in the middle of the red light areas. Some are at the periphery. We take support from all corners. So it is like, we draw our strength and our energy from the network that we have. And this is one very, very best practice that we are realizing, that we need to increase the network beyond the destination. We need to increase it at all the points, like the transit point, the source area.
Okay, so there's another question that I wanted to ask. So is there any story that has stayed with you during this journey? And it is a tough task when you are with one year, you're spending 10 years, trying to change something for one person, or changing the life of just one person. So it must be taking a toll, but is there any story that has stayed with you and motivated you that, no, I need to wake up and continue doing this and continue to fight?
Yeah, I think I was just chatting up with my colleagues, my team members, as a preparation to this interview, because I need to do some more research, because my exposure to the life-changing stories that we have experienced the past 25 years is quite a lot, and it will not be a justice for me to only share what I have encountered. But there are several stories, and every month we have a bulletin where we relay stories with all the identity protected. And I keep reading from within my organization, and also we share it across the network. There are a few stories which are really on the top of the list, which personally I have also encountered. One story was of a woman who, classically, as I mentioned, was forced into this trade when she was very, very young, from one of our neighboring countries. And then she spent almost 20-25 years in the red light areas. And I think that was around the time when she was in her mid 26 years of age that we encounter her as part of our target group in Kamathipura. This lady, we took more than 7 years, to kind of establish the trust with her. And eventually, after we have, worked with her for 10 years, she on her own came out from the trade. And by then we had, through our livelihood program and all other interventions, she had built up a portfolio of skills more than one, where she could, find her own income, additional income. And then eventually she left the trade. And she continued to help us without any salary. And eventually, 2 years down the line, she brought out 7 young girls on her own without a project intervention. We didn't have to, intervene. She was the one who brought out 7 young girls and her own, and she connected, the young girls to us in our rescue work. So that was amazing to me. And I had an interview with her. I think that was 4 years back when I met her in Mumbai. I was really touched. And this lady's story, the story of these women, has always motivated me whenever I think about the challenges, because if you change the life of one person,
right,
there is a ripple effect. And I saw that, in my own eyes.
Yeah.
And I believe that there are many more such, because we don't advertise much. We don't disclose the name. But we do have stories which, impact other lives in the related areas. And that is, I think, the story we share across in the team. And also some of the staff members who have worked, more years than me, or, recently some people also retired from the organization, ladies, they cross 60 years. They have had actually more encounters, more experiences, more stories. You know what I feel is, there are others who have kind of transform, I should say. And then young girls, when we initially intervene in the red light areas, young girls who would have lost their ways today are in in some good jobs that we are keeping track, and some of them work with us as our staff. Of course, we don't, advertise. And there are young boys also who, the children of the sex workers who are working in Tatas, who are working in five-star hotels. And they are the one who are coming back and, sponsoring 500 a month. They are putting their money to continue. And this is, I think, the real story of Oasis. It's very small, but then I think it is catching on. And the ripple effect that we all learn in colleges or in development sector. Sometimes we find it difficult to believe ourselves as practitioner. I saw a lot of stories like this in Oasis, especially in the work of our Mumbai area.
Yeah. That is such a beautiful story. I think, yes, these are the true heroes, and they know the real meaning of giving back. So yeah, that brings me to my next question, that we were discussing how disasters and conflicts were one of the main factors contributing to women and child trafficking. So how is it related? Can you please explain this to our audience? Because this is something that has not been explained or touched upon. So if you could help us understand what this is about.
Yeah, thank you so much. This is really, really important, especially for the development sector. If I may say a little bit about myself, I have worked in this sector for more than 25 years in the development sector. And initial years of my work, I should say around 15 years, was largely in humanitarian response. Mostly starting from the tsunami. Tsunami, I was in Campbell Bay. I was in the Port Blair as part of the joint response of Caritas and CRS, and also in the Kashmir flood, the Orissa cyclone. You name it, I was there because I worked in humanitarian sector for more than 15 odd years. But mostly in Assam, where there is a recurring flood every year. Now, I remember after I joined Oasis and I saw some of those survivors in the red light areas, and I connect back some of those experience I had during my time working in the humanitarian response. Now, in most of these disaster-prone area, immediately after displacement, there would be camps set up. That's a normal process, relief camps. And then there would be enlisting of the survivors there. the displaced community.
Yeah.
And then innocently, those days, whenever we go back after every week to check on the situation, there will be some young people missing from those camps. And then you would, occasionally or casually ask them where the parents or the people who are still there to ask, where are these young people? Then the answer that we would get was like, they have gone back to their villages or to their relatives. Now, we didn't suspect anything. But remember, there is no more families. Their houses are already uprooted, destroyed by the water. And where are they going back? No, we didn't ask that actually those days. We never asked, especially in the tea estates in Assam, in the lower and upper Assam. There are a lot of Adivasis, who are already more marginalized than the others. And whenever the flood hits them, their shanties, they live in shanties, which are easily destroyed. And the village is underwater. Now, the question is, where are they going back? When they say they have gone back to their villages, there's no village anymore. For the next 3 months, there will be no village because it will be still underwater. Or relatives, they don't have relatives outside of the tea estate. So obviously, they have been sent out for some other livelihood option. The young girls, they will be sent out to some cities for, domestic work, or some factories, they'll send them out. I think that is the answer. And then eventually, these are the young people who will end up in human trafficking, net. So when I joined Oasis, I connected the dots. No, I never asked, I never probed the question beyond, the answer. We used to be satisfied saying that, okay, they have gone back. But this is precisely what I wanted to bring into the humanitarian sector. I did a few occasions, I did bring it up because I'm also part of the Sphere India network, which is a humanitarian chapter for India. But quite a few takers on that, quite a few takers. So this is a burden I have. Given the opportunity, I would also bring it up. So we worked on a small, research in Oasis. Few years back, we did some kind of a secondary data analysis, and we have now a very good, reliable data, also supported by some, independent research, that there is definitely a connect of any disaster, massive disaster, you may call it a tsunami or a regular flood or earthquake or even conflicts, where there are so much of, uncertainty and displacement, physical displacement of families. That is the place where traffickers go. And if they are easy prey to, traffickers, they can fool them better other than when they are in normal time. Like when you are most vulnerable, physically hungry, without clothes and, a shelter, anything that comes your way, you tend to grab it. So I think there's a definite connect, and we have some of the data also.
So this will be the last question. The question is, how can we play a role in eliminating the human trafficking in our country? And the most important part of the question, which is the second one, is how do we end the discrimination against the survivors and ensure that they get to restart and live a dignified life?
This is really, really the crux. I would say the second crux. I was under the impression that one of the reasons why in India we still have human trafficking, flourishing as a business, which is a very, very steady business. Sometimes we blame a lot of other sources, like the temple Devadasi. We have a history of this patronizing from the priest. That is not the only reason. A lot of us, we forget that all the red light areas today were cantonments of the British colony. In all the red light areas, the old ones, if you do some deeper research, they were all cantonments, the British cantonments. So this was like, if you remember, in the Second World War, the Japanese had, Korean slaves. Korean slaves. They were enslaved to service the outstation Japanese army. Similarly, like that, British had that same game plan. They had set up cantonments across Asia, South Asia, and also mostly in India. And within the cantonment area, there would be a red light district. That is part of the, a colonial setup. Because there are foreigners, the British soldiers, or even the Indian soldiers, who are picked up from across the country, and they are away from their family, and they have to, give them some comfort. Otherwise, it can lead to mutiny.
Right.
So this is the other story. Now, coming back to where and how, we should be able to reduce this discrimination is actually both. I think the answer lies both in the community, the individual, and also the government. One, I'll not like to talk much about the government. I think we need to talk about ourselves, the civil society, individual, family, right to the smallest unit of society, the family. Now, in India, we are a very, very, large country, big country with a lot of different culture and different, what you call taboos. We are coming with a lot of discrimination already.
Yes.
So I was saying to my colleagues, the sex workers are treated worse than the Dalits in India. Dalits, the history.
Yeah.
They are untouchable. Now, in the Varna system, you have the Dalits, outside of it. I think the sex workers would come below the Dalits. That's how we treat them here in this country. It is, it is like HIV/AIDS patient. They were treated like criminals, sinners. Many of the cases were, indirect cases, like the husband would infect them or the hospitals would infect them. They were not necessarily sex workers or, what you call immoral people. So similarly, the sex workers now, since we have been discussing from the, time we started this interview, they are not doing it out of joy. Right. They're being forced. They're slaves. And will a democratic country in India allow that? Now, we can't stop that, illegalize immediately till the time you give them an alternative. Now, but then you keep on giving alternative. I mean, we don't stop the source, the reason, the root cause is poverty, as we already agreed. And also, what are the other reasons why poverty, abject poverty occurs? Education, and also the taboos that we have. Now, I think, coming down to the point, I take it as my own family. In my family, how do I, perceive a sex worker? I have teenage children, my son, my daughter, they're all teenage. Have I done enough to educate them on, sex? I need to give them a sex education, and also about sex workers.
Right.
Otherwise, you never know. When they grow big, they might also go with that perception that they are bad people. They're doing it for their own good. They don't enjoy it. So I think, especially in the rural areas and the middle class India, we need to do a lot more education at the home, at the school, at all platforms. We need to educate our own people about, the human dignity, about these people who are trapped, that they are not really doing it on their own. And we need to give them the dignity, one thing. And also, we are the one, in a way, the men, especially the men. Without the demand, there will be no supply, right?
Yes.
I think it's the men, because the sex education is not properly inculcated at the young age, and also because the society is so full of restriction, rigidity on sexual, psychosocial education. They're so frustrated. And then we want to vent it out and go to a red light area. And we are the one creating the demand. No more the temple, priests, no more the British army. Now today we are the one, the Indian, the husbands or the young people who are frustrated so much because they can't even discuss at home, and they go secretly to a red light area, and that is the demand. Now, unless, we take up at all sphere of life, right, starting from the home, parents starting to talk about taboos, talk about the right way of sex education, and at the same time, respecting this profession. It's not that we are trying to prolong this, but then whoever are there are trapped. So there could be an end to this profession, and only if you have a right education, and then the demand is reduced. If you don't reduce the demand, the supply will continue, because that's how business works, no? There are a lot of businessmen who would invest, irrespective of ethics. They will invest because there's big money coming in. So I feel they say that it is impossible to do away with prostitution, because it's the oldest profession. But then I don't believe in that notion. I believe that it is the demand and supply. You see, so many things which were unthinkable have happened. Right? Russia, we never thought that USSR will break away. It has broken into pieces of countries. So I feel that, even this oldest profession called prostitution can be wiped away from the face of the earth if we can work on the demand side. And a country like ours, I think, is one of the top in terms of this profession, and we can do a lot, and we can really create impact globally if we can put our house in order in India. And finally, I say that it is you and me. Me, you, we need not be in this sector. We can be from across the sector, or we can be even unemployed farmer, anybody. We need to have the right education.
Right. Thank you so much for that beautiful point. I think education is something that can solve a majority of the problems that India is facing currently, whether it is migration or child trafficking or anything. If we deep dive into the problem, the one thing that comes is the lack of education. So yeah, I think we need to focus more on educating our masses and bringing back the focus into the things that are important. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us. It was such an insightful conversation, and thank you so much. It was a pleasure having you.
Thank you for giving us this platform. Thank you so much.